Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri. Hello, and welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And we have an incredible young fire powerhouse individual on here today. Margy Feldhuhn, I think I got that right, is the co-owner and CEO of the Interview Connections, the first and leading podcast booking agency. Margy and her business partner, Jessica, have in-house staff over 25 full-time employees, and they have successfully scaled their agency to multiple seven figures. So just when you think you can't, you can, and we're going to be hearing from her. Her team are currently the powerhouses behind a rapidly growing catalog of hundreds of successful entrepreneurs and businesses, including Ali Brown, Paul Ross, JJ Virgin, and USA Financial. Oh my goodness. Margy, welcome to the show.
Teri, thank you so much for having me.
I am excited. I love listening to really powerhouse women because I just think that, we get to, shine and we get to have the light shine on us for a little bit to share like what has been that success story, because I know that I have not met yet a successful person that has not overcome some sort of challenge, barrier, or block. So bring us up to speed, how you got to be where you're at today.
Yes, I love that you focus on those barriers because my journey has kind of been one barrier after another. So, but there's also been a lot of amazing personal growth and law of attraction and manifesting and therapy and everything. So I own a business that I didn't found, which is a very kind of law of attraction thing. I wanted to be a business owner. I remember listening to Abraham Hicks, and I didn't have a business at that time. And I was in a very dark place. I had just lost my dad to suicide unexpectedly, and we were really close. I was an only child. And that stirred up everything, like all the trauma that I hadn't dealt with around my childhood and my relationship with my parents and growing up in a home with a lot of mental illness. My dad was a hoarder. So when he died, I had to clean out the house. It was this huge project. So after that, when I got home, so I had been teaching English for 2 years in Taiwan because I just wanted to live abroad and I love to travel. And I came home. It was like the coldest winter ever in Rhode Island. That's where I live now. And that's where my parents' house is. And I had to plan the memorial and do this 5-month clean of the house. I had a gigantic dumpster. And after all that, I moved to Colorado. And this was probably not a good idea. But it had been the plan before my dad died that my partner at the time was going to go to school there and we would both move to Colorado. So the day I finished cleaning my parents' house, we got in a U-Haul and went to Colorado with my 2 cats. And this was a very dark time because I had just lost my dad. I really hadn't had an opportunity to process because I'd been focused all day, every day on cleaning out the house. And then suddenly I have no project to focus on. I'm in a town where I know no one. I have no family, no friends, no support, no job. Yeah. And it was a very dark time. And I was at that point where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And teaching English abroad, while it was really fun, had sort of felt like a pause on real life. And I came back and everyone else had spent 2 years advancing their careers and, they were getting promoted or going to med school. And I was still kind of trying to figure out what I even wanted to do. So I was grieving. I was lost. I had no idea how to make money, how to support myself, how to actually build a life that I loved. And so I was listening to a lot of personal development, a lot of Abraham Hicks. I was doing a lot of like journaling and manifesting. And I really wanted to be a business owner. And I had discovered MLM and I was like, maybe this is it because it's already got some momentum. And then realized pretty quickly that it was a lot harder than it looked. And it really wasn't a business model that I felt super aligned with or really enjoyed doing. And so I was listening to Abraham Hicks, and I remember they were talking to someone who wanted a business, and they asked him a question that I thought was so interesting. They said, well, do you want to start a business from scratch, or do you want to jump into a business that already has some momentum? And I'm pretty sure I said out loud, momentum.
Yeah.
And soon after that, I got a job as a $15 an hour contractor for Interview Connections. The owner, the founder, Jess, my now business partner, we had worked together at a nonprofit and reconnected actually because of my dad's death, because she adopted his cat. I needed people to come foster and adopt my parents' pets, and she had adopted this cat. So we had reconnected. And I learned about remote work from somebody else 2 days after hearing that remote work existed and was like, wait, I can work from home. I saw a Facebook post by Jess that, hey, we're hiring remote contractors to be booking agents. And I was like, this is it, right? So I become a contractor, and I'm still living kind of below the poverty line at that point.
Right.
But I have freedom. And that was so much of what I wanted is I can make my own hours. I can work wherever I want. And so I really dove in. I had never listened to podcasts besides Serial, but I started listening to my clients' podcast interviews so that I could get to know them better in order to pitch them well to other shows. And I realized, oh, this is what I want. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to have a business.
Yeah.
And so that was 2016.
Like
And
a business flag.
yeah, exactly. And just so many things made sense. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. I was mad at myself for getting bored so easily in jobs, for like getting really good at a job and then 6 months in being like, I'm bored. I want to quit. And the boss is always so surprised, right? Because they think you're doing a good job. I thought you liked it here. And it just, everything made sense when I learned about entrepreneurship. And I started as a contractor. I ended up moving home from Colorado because unsurprisingly, that didn't go well at all.
Yeah.
And
we miss you. That's where I'm from. I'm from Colorado.
Oh, I love Colorado as a state.
It's fantastic, but I get you. Like, given the circumstances, I think any state that you would have moved to would have been the same situation, because it was like, I think, when we're in those places and spaces, it's hard to dig out. And you're right. If you're in a place where there is at least some familiarity and there's at least some, family or friends or someone that you can reach out to, it makes that process, not only the grieving process, but I'm certain that there was probably depression, there was anxiety, there was like all this other stuff that was happening. And when you're in a place by yourself, I mean, I struggled coming out here, and I was in we made the choice, we were excited about it. And I struggled the first year to 2 years because we knew no one, so.
Yeah. It does help that Colorado is incredibly beautiful. And I loved it as a state, but having no support, having no purpose, having no job, it was just like a recipe for disaster for someone who was in early grief and also had a lot of undiagnosed and unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
So I moved home to Rhode Island. I became first employee in 2017 of Interview Connections, which actually, and Jess didn't even know my side of the story for like years, but I actually accepted that job and then went home and cried to my best friend because I was so crushed, because I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to be a business owner, and it felt like a step back. But my friend, and also kind of me deep down, knew it was a step forward, but didn't understand why, but I stuck with it. And a year later, I asked for 50% equity and got it. And I'm now the CEO. So it was really kind of an amazing quantum leap type journey.
Yeah. Well, there was something in you that trusted this process. And as you were telling your story, it just drew me in because I'm like, oh, just keep talking. I just want to listen to it. Right. And again, it's not all of those, challenges and barriers that you had to overcome was not easy, but it really took you to this place that you were open to exploring what else is out there. And, like you said, like you were listening to some of these more spiritual / energy based, practices and, really tying those principles into our lives. And again, this is something that we can all learn, and just become more conscious of it to how it contribute to us. But as you're saying, like how you guys reconnected through your dogs or through your dad's, cat, like I was like, wow, of course, this is like just meant to be, right?
It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. And the way we originally met when I first graduated from college, I had been like, I just like didn't know what I wanted to do with my life in college. So I ended up double majoring in art and Latin. And then of course at 22, I graduated from college and could not get a job because why would I?
Right.
And so the only place I could find jobs that I thought I had a chance of actually getting were on Craigslist. And I found a job on Craigslist that was going door to door, asking for money for the environment. And of course, they have a huge turnover rate. So they'll like hire anybody. So I like applied and they like called me in like a half a second. They were just like, hi. And there were so many moments along the way. And that was one of them that felt like failure, right? Yeah. Like my friends had majored in things where you could actually get jobs and done internships. So they were now getting paid positions in marketing and stuff, the places they'd done internships, or they were applying to med school. And I found myself feeling really lost and feeling kind of like a failure. Like all I can get is this $9 an hour job off Craigslist going door to door. But going door to door asking for money ended up being some of the best entrepreneurial training I could have ever gotten. And the person who interviewed me for that job is my now business partner. So if I had majored in something better and gotten a better job, I probably would be doing worse right now.
Yeah. No, that's really fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating how things, I truly believe that, God, spirit, angels, whatever you want to call it, is always on our back. And, sometimes we're taking this path that doesn't make sense to us. And we're going, we're going over here. And now we're going over here. And like, wait, and then like somewhere they're like, it gets tied up with this like little bone. Like, oh my gosh, this all makes sense now. Like wasn't necessarily easy, but now that I'm, back on track, I'm like, okay, I see that all these other things has contributed to that success. So your business now, I'm going to shift it just a little bit because I think it's absolutely powerful. And as so that was in 2016 when you joined, and podcasting was just starting really. Really getting momentum at that point. Obviously podcasting had existed prior to that, but now everybody and their cousin has a podcast, and I find it really fascinating. And I'll share with you, like so many of the listeners have heard this before, that I had never wanted to have a podcast, and it wasn't on my bucket list. I'm one of these people that like to throw out, my targets for the year and stuff. It's never been on my targets. It's never been on my bucket list. It's never been on, and all of a sudden, like, universe, if you will, just like this energy, like, and it like just fell into my lap. Things happened really quickly. It just became this really quick process. And now just literally like 5 months ago, I now have the understanding of why that is. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's like so beautiful. I'm like, but it took me almost a year and a half to figure it out. So, but a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners are tapping into the magic of podcasting. What are some of your like tips or understanding and how to help, people make the most out of their podcast?
Yes.
Which is a loaded question, by the way. I realize that.
I like loaded questions. So I love, first of all, hearing the story of your podcast because there's so many other hosts who have similar stories. It's hard to put your finger on it, but there's something magical about podcasts. And as a vehicle for storytelling and conversation and content, they're just so dynamic. They're so living that
Yeah.
they have this like almost life breathed into them, that while other types of content are amazing and important for your business to be producing, there's something about podcasts. There's something about the connection that happens between two people really being able to share who they are and their story, in addition to talking about their company and tactics and stuff like that. There's just some magic there. So what our company does is we work with entrepreneurs and we book them as guests on other people's podcasts. So we have a mix of clients. Some of them have their own podcast as well. And some of them don't have a podcast, but they know they need to get out there on podcasts and get in front of other people's audiences.
Yeah.
So that's what we help them do. A lot of our clients who don't have a podcast though, and are like you, and they don't want to have a podcast, after guesting for a year or two, they find themselves being like, all right, I'm going to start a podcast. They can't not, right? Because
Right.
it's just like bursting out of them.
Yeah.
So, but that's what we do. So we help our clients really get clear on who they are, what their message is. They come to us and they already have successful businesses, but they're not always used to this type of media where it is so long form, it's so casual and conversational. So we talk to them a lot about their topics, their questions, their values, their target audience. And then we book them on shows that have synergy. So either the host is a great partner for them or client for them, or just a great connection in person for them to know. And the audience probably is going to be either in their target audience for their primary offering, or just great people to know who they are. And they're gaining that consistent visibility by getting in front of other people's audiences. And it's a win-win because we're looking at shows where the host and the audience of that show is going to get what they want and what they're looking for from this person's expertise, and vice versa. So we want to always be creating that magic and that synergy. So that's what we do for our clients. And I would say, whether you have a podcast or not, consistently guesting, and consistent for us, we talk about doing like 4 guest spots a month on other people's shows about once a week, is an incredible way to become more discoverable, become more visible, and also foster real relationships and connections. Some of the best business friends I have met because they interviewed me on their podcast, and we just totally hit it off. We stay in touch. We refer people to each other. And a lot of them do also become clients of Interview Connections, but it's so much more than that. There's so much value in those relationships. So that's what we help our clients do. And my advice would be to get out there, whether you get yourself out there, whether you use a service, whether you have a podcast or not. Being a guest on other people's shows and in front of other people's audiences should definitely be part of your strategy this year.
I'll be honest, like I think podcasting on other people is like it helps you sharpen your story or sharpen your skills, your interviewing skills. And honestly, in total transparency, I do a lot of television appearances now, and the podcasting has helped tremendously because it just helps with the confidence, the getting comfortable with doing more sound bites and things like that, which has been awesome. And to your point again is, my some of my closest friends or business partners have been people that I've either interviewed with or they've interviewed with me. And I just received a text yesterday from a good friend, I would call her, that we met on a podcast. And she just shared with me her, wedding pictures that she just had. She invited me to her wedding actually, but then they, because of all the COVID stuff and all the other stuff. And she's like, you know what, too much headache. We're just eloping and we're doing it by ourselves. No, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like the fact that I received a, text, from her, sharing that, I was like, oh my gosh. So it's so powerful. It's so beautiful to be connected with people all over the place. And for those that are connectors, this is a great way to start connecting people. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to say this. No, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say it.
Yay, say it.
I have this like little, there's some people that I interview that I love. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I have this like love list. so, if they were great on the interview, we had some great, chemistry. And so when people ask me who are guests that you liked, I have this like love list now that I'm like, okay, these are my favorites that I had, and here's why, and whatever. But I have this like little love list. Is that weird?
No, that is perfectly normal. And I find, and our clients do too, that guests have, when you go on enough shows, you have a similar thing, right? It's not, you don't have to become best friends with every single host, right?
No,
It's not about forcing it.
no.
You want to be giving and grateful and create a good relationship and
Yes.
give value. But if you're not best friends, you're just not best friends.
Yeah.
But yes, there always is the love list or the BFF list of those people
Yeah.
who it's like, I just want to talk to you all the time.
Yeah, yeah, and some of them we've invited him back on the show for different things. We've collaborated with. I have one individual that she's going to come and speak at my live event, and so like there's some partnerships and synergies, and it's like okay, ooh, and I'm also looking at how can I help? I love looking at folks that I can collaborate with, who can be referral partners in our businesses that we can support each other, So I mean, it's just the benefits definitely outweigh the anxiety about starting one. you know,
Yes.
and I love, I'm happy to share. When we launched, we had obviously a strategy to launch, and it was just so powerful. And we hit, huge rankings in the top 50 in the US. We had the top 50 or 40 in some other countries. I think it was number 8 in another country. And so it was really powerful. And so there's definitely some strategy. Of course, I love thinking about the strategy and the whole picture, but really powerful stuff. And I think, honestly, one of the things that I work with a lot of female entrepreneurs with is about being seen and giving them permission to be seen. And so this is really a safe way, especially if you don't want to necessarily take a stage and speak in that way yet. This is a really great way that's safe, it's comfortable, it's just a conversation with one person. And so if you're thinking about, gosh, I would like to do more speaking engagement, but I'm still scared and take that leap, this is a great platform to start working and warming yourself up to, taking those bigger steps and really be seen. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's such an excellent point. And I think it's true for people, whether they're afraid to get out on stage or not. It is such like a cozy, collaborative, supportive, intimate space. And so it is great if you're an introvert or if you have some type of anxiety around visibility. I think that's true for a lot of people, especially a lot of women. There's a lot of threat response that can come up when
Yeah.
you look at getting visible. And we have that with our clients, right? We talk to our clients. Sometimes our new clients, that does come up for them, but the repetition, the consistency of showing up, doing those 4 guest appearances every single month. And it is such a safe and supportive space. And so that fear starts to kind of like unclench a little bit and relax. And then they do find, and I love what you said about messaging, because I don't always talk about this because it's not sexy to everyone. But one of my favorite things about podcast guesting is that it's a live messaging lab, and being in a live conversation with another person, the way that it evolves how you speak about yourself, how you speak about your business, it also infuses so much life into the other content I create. Otherwise, things can get a little stale, right? Like we do our content day every month. We create our emails and our blog posts and our social media posts, our videos. And I think those would get really stale and boring if we weren't also in these live conversations where we are evolving in real time. And you can see just in 1 year how fast our messaging has evolved. And that just wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the consistent conversations on other people's podcasts.
I couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely believe that. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Gary Vee, or maybe it was Russell Brunson, who had said, it really takes us 50 times, 50 podcast times, 50, whatever that is, to really hone and work that. And I couldn't agree more. Literally, when I hit my 50th podcast, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh, like, it's here. Like, oh my gosh, they were so right. But it was like, and I was listening to them, and they said, And I forget who it is. So I apologize that I'm not giving due diligence on the person who said this, but they said he came back and I think he's like at 200 or 300, podcast interviews. And they say, he's like, I should just go delete like the first 50 or first 100 because, that's not where I'm at now. And the advice that they gave him, which was, I thought was brilliant, was do not delete those first 50 or whatever when you weren't as good as you are now, because people are going to come in and they want to see your growth. They want to see your transformation. They want to see them in you and say, gosh, well, if Gary Vee or if Russell Brunson or Tony Robbins or whatever, like if they can see you not at your game right now, it gives hope. It gives them say, you know what, gosh, everyone starts out at this level. Everyone starts out with this place of uncertainty. And so I just think it's really valuable. And that's why I haven't deleted my first 50. That's how I'm justifying it. Okay. So
No, but that's so real.
but you do get better. And it's quickly how, like you said, like how fast that can change and transform in just the repetition and the practice of it,
Yes. And I'm a big believer, even though my early interviews are kind of embarrassing, in keeping them up because it is important for people to see that growth. And I love that you're talking about 50. So when we work with clients, for a full year and they do 48. It actually usually comes out to 50 or 52 interviews in a year. And sometimes people will say that's a lot. And we're like, yeah, it is like, because it really takes that long to build up the consistency and the momentum to connect with enough people that you get those 20%, right? 80-20 rule, those 20% of like BFF hosts who really turn into partners. And also to improve, to get better and better and better. And the growth is truly exponential. I mean, you just keep getting out there, and my messaging a year from now is going to be so much better and so different from what it is now. And it also sparks so many new projects, right? Like, so I started a podcast called We Get It, Your Dad Died, where I interview high performing 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs about a profound loss in their life that they feel shaped them as a person and entrepreneur and contributed to their success with who they are now. And that project was born out of being a guest on other people's shows because I found that the conversation so often would go to the story of my dad's death and that grief. And it's such a big part of who I am as a leader that happened and that I had to do that work. And then I started getting other 7 and 8 figure business owners private messaging me saying, it's so funny that you'd say that because I lost my mom. And actually I would attribute my entire business to that. And and they never talk about it. And so you would never know. And I would say, would you be willing to talk about this? And that's how the show was born. So I love the stories and hearing how people overcome adversity and overcome challenges and podcasts. And you do such a great job of that on your show of facilitating a space for that. Podcasts are such a powerful way to not just see the highlight reel, but to hear what people actually went through to get to where they are now.
I just think when I started this podcast, it's like, I think I've known so many incredible, successful women, and we as women, I feel like we get trapped in this like comparatitis where we start to compare ourselves. And I really wanted to highlight the overcomer story because we look at these women and say, oh my gosh, they had this like amazing life. So that's why it was so easy for them. And that has never been the experience that I've experienced in any of the work that I've ever done in my counseling world or this world. And I wanted to highlight to say, we can make, lemonade out of lemons. And here's amazing women that have and chose to do this. And occasionally I have some few great men on here as well. But it's really about like, I think for me, it's like, okay, let's show the story, the behind the scenes story. And it gives them permission, says, okay, they didn't have it easy either. I can do this. And like, I think it just really impacts the ability for us to create and generate when we can see the behind the scenes. Like, let's pull the curtain behind so we can see the real transformation, the heart of their motivation to really create great,
Yeah. And I think the other thing that makes it powerful is it's a very safe place to pull back the curtain because the length of the conversation is long enough to provide full content.
Yeah.
to provide full context.
Yeah.
So it's not just because, people who are concerned about positioning, or they don't, they're like, I don't want my mess to be my message type of thing.
Yeah.
There's stuff that they might not want to post on Reels or on
Right.
their Instagram story that's behind the scenes. But a
Agreed.
podcast interview is so safe because you can really set up the entire context. So it's not like, hey, I'm a big failure. It's like, here's my progression. Here's where I
Yeah.
failed. Here's where I've succeeded. And I think that makes it very safe and creates really strong positioning, even though you're being very upfront about your many failures and hurdles and all of that.
Yeah, I think that is such an excellent point as well. It does create that space. Okay, I could literally talk to you all day. You might have to be added to my love list. All right, should we invite her to the love list? Yes, let's do it. Okay, so Margy, where can people connect with you and find out more information about you?
I am so honored to be on the love list. You are also on my love list, my host love list. So our website is interviewconnections.com. That's a really great place. If you're an entrepreneur who wants to start getting out there as a guest on other people's shows, that's a great place to learn about what we do, to connect with our team and ask questions. And then I also have a personal website, margywithahardg.com. And that is where my podcast, We Get It, Your Dad Died, lives. And it's also where I now have a blog, which is basically just a way for me to write about mistakes I've made in business and what I learned.
I love it. I love it. It was so, so powerful. You know what? I have just absolutely loved our time together. Thank you for, being the inspiration for others and giving. And as soon as we, get into our light, we automatically give permission for others to be their light. And so, take, what you heard from Margy today to heart. Where can you play a little bit bigger in your life? Where can you expand yourself? And if podcasting or being a podcast guest is something that's up your alley, please reach out, please connect. I mean, they have a done for you service, which is fabulous. Okay. So no more excuses. It's like, I can't get out there. Like, this is a done for you service. So it's awesome. So thank you so much, Margy, for being here today.
Thank you, Teri.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.